therapies, we have broadly three important therapies that we would focus right now, and those are psychodynamic therapies, behavioral therapies, and cognitive therapies. We would understand the differences between these three therapies on 6 different bases. So the first idea is, what is the root cause of the problem? Under a psychodynamic therapy, we believe that it is an internal conflict, something that arises from within. So let's say there is no one else telling you anything, but you yourself think that person XYZ is thinking so and so about me. And this is a conflict within yourself, an internal conflict that you have created within your psyche. You do not know what that person thinks, and rather that does not affect you, but still you have created a conflicting situation, and whenever you face the person XYZ, you would think that this person has a following mindset about me. So that is the main root cause that is being identified by a psychodynamic therapy. Under behavioral therapy, we say wrong learning and wrong behavior are the major problems. So for example, a child is afraid of dogs. Now, this is a faulty learning from the birth or the very early stages of childhood development, and this needs to be rectified. So what kind of therapies would be involved here? Here we would be using behavioral therapy. However, existential therapy, as we always say, is used when there is a big question mark about why I am here. What do I hold importance for in the life of myself as well as others? So you or a person starts to question about one's existence, considering there is no point of having this life, or I am not useful. Those are the kind of common things that come up, or is the root cause of problem under existential is the root cause of problem where existential therapies are given. So under the first case, the psychodynamic therapies, when those are administered, we understand that there are certain desires of childhood that are not fulfilled, and certain fears in the mind of an individual which are not resolved at a very early stage, and therefore this complicates later on. As and when it complicates, it creates a stressful situation, and to get rid of it, psychodynamic therapies are provided. However, the reason of the behavioral problems which could be resolved through behavioral therapies is very simple, and that is maladaptive behavior. Let's say there are 20 students in a classroom. 19 of them follow the discipline. However, there is one student who is always standing on the table rather than sitting on the table, standing on the chair rather than sitting on the chair, and that is an example of maladaptive behavior. So that kind of behavior needs to be fixed through the behavioral therapy. So any behavior which is publicly not seen, let's say you are walking on the road and there are dogs moving sideways, there would be 20 people who would be walking straightforwardly, but there would be one person who would be running unnecessarily because of the fear of dog, and therefore this becomes a maladaptive behavior. So behavioral therapies are useful to remove those kind of faulty learning patterns, faulty behavioral patterns, and faulty cognition or understanding. Cognition means understanding. So wherever there is faulty understanding, if I am explaining this topic right away and some of the students understand this incorrectly for any reason XYZ, then this becomes a faulty learning. Now, when there is a faulty learning, this would imply in the behavior at some point of time, and therefore faulty behavioral patterns are the cause where In those scenarios, behavioral therapies are administered. Existential therapy, as we said, a person has a big question mark about their life. Why do they exist? What's their importance? And that usually comes when the person is aloof, when the person feels lonely, or does not think that they are important by any means. So treatment in all the three cases are important. Now, under a psychodynamic therapy, we usually provide a free association or dream interpretation. We would be coming on to treatments independently in each of these sections when we focus on these topics in detail. Just to have a quick idea, free association is a person is asked to relax, and when a person is fully relaxed, the person or the client would start to speak. And in that point of time, willingly, unwillingly, consciously, unconsciously, the person would explain the real cause of problem. And then when the person is asked to sit and jot down what he has been dreaming about, those dream interpretation can help us understand or provide a good treatment methodology. Behavioral patterns are usually resolved either through systematic desensitization, positive reinforcement, aversive learning, or negative reinforcement as some of the common examples. We would be talking about each of those in the separate sections. Existential therapies usually focus on positive talks. So talking to a person positively without any judgment, because the person, the therapist, would consider that the client is talking about the problems, and since the client is talking about the problems, the role of the therapist is to bring the solution for the problems. The therapist should not have any judgmental views about the client. Let's say a person comes in with a problem that they have anxiety when the exam is near. Now, in this case, a person as a therapist cannot judge that this person is not prepared for the examination. So, it is judgmental. You have to keep your views open as the client approaches you, and in that case, non-judgmental talks are important. Only a non-judgmental talk can be accepting and healing for the client. The next is, what is the role of the therapist? The role of the therapist in all the three cases is very important. In a psychodynamic therapy, the therapist helps to provide an emotional insight to evolve and to gain understanding about oneself. Under a behavioral therapy, the therapist helps to have an adaptive behavior, a behavior which is followed by masses and is not different from the masses. Existential therapy, the therapist would try to provide that you are important, you have certain values which others do not have, and these are essential for your personal growth. So understand that the therapist is the same person in all the three cases. It's just the same person providing the therapies, but in each of these therapies, the outcome that would be witnessed would be different. And as we can say, in some cases, you are trying to provide self-understanding about oneself, emotional insight. In the other cases, it is action-oriented, where adaptive behaviors are created or a maladaptive behavior is being rectified. So, role of therapist is essential, and this definitely benefits the client. In a psychodynamic therapeutic approach, the client would have a ability to interpret themselves, and the conflicts could be resolved by oneself. Under the behavioral therapy, all the faulty behaviors would be known, and the person would then try to fix or rectify those faulty behaviors. And finally, under an existential therapy, the person usually have idea of developing empathetic relationship, and with this empathetic relationship, more motives, aspirations or values could be brought into account. Now, as far as treatment is concerned, psychodynamic is the longest of all the three. It goes up for years and years, and in some cases with modern methods, psychodynamic could be shortened to 10 to 15 sessions. Every session we have 5 sessions every week, so that is considered as a one big chunk. So the whole psychodynamic therapy that runs for years and years could then be squeezed. However, behavioral and existential therapies are relatively short and completed in few months. So those are some of the major ideas based on which we understand the differences between the three major therapeutic approaches. We would be covering these one by one separately.